Okay, so we have all the board members here. We are no longer in executive session. For the benefit of the public, no votes were taken during executive session. Again, welcome to the March 25th, 2021 AR Small virtual meeting. My name is Lindsay Van Slambrook. The other board members present this afternoon are Glenn Gardner, Bill Huey, Julia Martin, and Fillmore Wilson. City staff present are Kim Lavin and Tori Parrish. The order of the meeting will be as follows. We'll start with an introduction and overview of the project by city staff for the benefit of the board and the public. Next, we'll have a presentation by the applicant that will be limited to 10 minutes. Please state your name first and last very clearly for the board so we know who you are. Anyone affiliated with the project, we ask that you speak during this time. This includes owners, developers, architects, anyone who is speaking on behalf of the applicant. The applicant's presentation will be followed by public comment. Again, if you are speaking during the public comment period, please state your name first and last clearly for the record. Public comment will be followed by city staff comments and recommendations. Then we will have a period of time for the applicant to respond or clarify anything after the public comment and city staff recommendations. The board, by ordinance, is allowed to ask questions of the applicant at any time. By custom, we typically ask questions on the heels of the applicant's presentation. After the applicant has the opportunity to respond or clarify, we will move into board discussion and a vote. The following items have been withdrawn. 48 Bull Street was withdrawn by the applicant and 181 Queen Street was withdrawn by staff. I will remind you to please limit your comments to architecture only. Comments related to zoning, parking, traffic, lot coverage are not within the purview of this board and cannot be voiced here. Now, Kim will go over some virtual meeting protocols.
Thank you. Staff will control the PowerPoint presentation that includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with submittal requirements. Applicants simply need to ask staff to advance to the next slide during your presentation. Applicants, staff, and board members are required to give their name whenever speaking. Video and microphone has been disabled for all attendees. Attendees, not board or staff, will only be given capability to speak when they're called on during public comment period. Chat and the Q&A functions have been disabled for everyone. For public comment, the applicants and all team members and the public have been required to register, indicate the project they wish to comment on, and submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Just as in an in-person meeting, all applications heard today are part of a public meeting format. If you've registered and will be speaking during the public comment portion of the meeting, you'll need to state your name and address for the record. Those members of the public that have registered will be called on in order by project. Members of the public that speak are encouraged to remain in the meeting for completion of the item that they've commented on. Staff will call on the registered members of the public to speak for each comment. Unregistered members of the public who raise their hand will not be called on. For the board members will be polled by the chair for comments and for their vote on a motion. Each member, when voting, should respond yay in favor or nay not in favor. The chairman shall reread the motion verbatim, and the board member making the motion should correct the chairman if she has not reread the motion accurately. In the case of a recusal, the board member will be temporarily removed from the meeting and placed back in the meeting at the start of the next agenda item. If the board needs to go into an executive session, they will call into a separate conference line, and all video and audio on Zoom will temporarily be turned off until they're ready to return to the regular. Results and staff comments will be posted on the citywide website at www.charleston-sc.gov/BAR. And lastly, these proceedings are being recorded.
Thank you. We'll move to the first item on the agenda, which is 900 King Street. And Kim, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you. 900 King Street is requesting final approval for the new construction of a greenhouse. The property is a category 1 in the north central neighborhood, and The buildings were started there in 1887. They've continued up until 2006, but it's in the landmark corridor.
Kim, I have to recuse for this. I've corrected my original. I sent you an
Thank you,
email.
Fillmore. I will remove you and put you on hold. Thank you. This is an aerial image, and the property is outlined in red to give you a little context, and some existing site photos. It's from King Street, some historic images, abs images. And we have Miss Audrey Hessen here. Audrey, you have the floor whenever you're ready.
Can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So my name is Audrey Hessen, and I'm here with Brittany Smith, and we work for Metters. We are partnering with the Green Heart Project on a 290 square foot greenhouse at their urban farm, which is located at the William Enston home, 900 King Street. Originally, the client wanted to purchase an off-the-shelf prefabricated metal kit, but after reflecting on the site, decided they wanted to move forward with a custom design, which is what we are proposing today. Next slide, please. So previously located on the old store and farm, when Enston came to Charleston, he recognized issues in economic and social status in the 1880s. So the development of this property was an interest in making old age comfortable, as well as an interest in actually providing gardens for the residents. Next. The primary structures in proximity to the proposed greenhouse are the infirmary located to the south, Memorial Hall to the north, and the cottages. Relevant features that we were mindful of during our design process were a covered entry, repetition, banding, and interlocking details. Next. So from King and Euger Street, the greenhouse itself is minimally visible. You kind of have to look between the buildings. Next. It isn't until you are within the site itself that the structure, which would be to the south in the red box, is visible. This is the current urban garden, which is operable. So there are 62 raised garden beds. Down the primary axis to the north, there is an existing Ipe and corrugated metal roof farm stand, and more centrally located to the garden, there was a recently approved cypress community pavilion as well. Next. Looking at the specific site where the greenhouse itself will go, you can see its proximity to the infirmary, as well as its adjacency to existing vegetation and those garden beds. Next. So the design of the greenhouse itself was influenced by 3 quotes related to the site and its history. The first being to make old age comfortable, which has been reflected in the materiality of Ipe for the structure to allow it to age with less worry of maintenance and durability, which brings comfort to the users. It is also non-toxic to the plantings, so it benefits the function, but anchors aesthetically the 2 ends of that primary axis of the site between the greenhouse and the existing farm stand. The second being more than the sum of its parts, it is the overall scheme of the Enston home that is of interest and value, which is reflected in the construction process, utilizing a kit of parts method, which creates a more significant whole or sum and reflects this scheme. And lastly, each cottage must have a small garden to busy the occupant, which of course is reflected in the product of the greenhouse itself, but also the entirety of the urban farm. Next. So in a site, we were not able to select the location. It was a part of a pre-approved master plan, but we were able to select the orientation of the building, which we aligned with sight lines pulled from the homes on the Enston property. Next. So from the ground up, the structure has a strip concrete footing, which helps elevate the framing off of the ground to further protect it from any moisture contact. It is also laid out on a grid so that way we can maximize the dimensions of the materials that we are building with to reflect the interest in sustainability and minimal excess or drops that the client is interested in. Next. So in a floor plan, you can see that there are 2 entry and exit points, one directly off of the garden to the right side and one off of Colsterworth Avenue, which would be more of a service entry. The structure is 16 by approximately 21 feet long, again, 290 square feet, and the interior ground cover would be gravel, so that is permeable when they are watering the plants. Next. From the roof, you begin to see the primary functionality component of the greenhouse, which would be its ventilation, which is along the ridge here. Next. In elevation from the north and the south, we bring in those key features that we related to the existing structures on the site. So the alignment of the rafters to the columns repeated down the grid is that repetition, where then at the faces of the structure, that framing turns from perpendicular to the earth to parallel to it to create an alluded to covered entry or a threshold as you pass into and out of the greenhouse. From the east and the west, that is then visible since the polycarbonate is inset between the framing as bold bands that is repeated along the length of the structure. Next. The final of the broad components that we are looking at would be horizontal banding, which is seen from the interior in terms of the optional shelving or permanent vent sill, which correlates to the detailed brick coursing on the existing homes. Next. Looking at the left 2 wall sections, this is cut through those bands to see the alignment of the rafter to the column and highlight how the wall is divided between 3/4 polycarbonate that is inset where the optional shelving is and 1/4 side ventilation. The right 2 wall sections being cut through that alluded to framed entry, and again, being able to see how this creates a threshold passing into and out of the greenhouse. Next. Looking at the details here is where we highlight the custom components key or the kit of parts. And this is how we interconnect with the interlocking details of the existing home. So whether it be the custom CNC shelf supports that insert themselves with no fasteners into the column, or how the purlins intersect with the rafters, it creates a crafted detail that then attachments can be created for the panels. Next. The top details on this page are for the ridge ventilation. The bottom are for the side ventilation. And we would like to note here, the auto vent opener is a small mechanism arm that is placed at each individual panel. So that way we can isolate any issue that may arise while the greenhouse itself is still operable. It works based off of a wax that the client can set a temperature to register to either open or close using a spring mechanism. Next. Again, looking at the right side of the page, these would be custom panels that are created, as well as the doors. So that way we aren't purchasing anything that gets inserted. It would all be Ipe framing and polycarbonate to keep a uniform aesthetic throughout the greenhouse. Next.
Ms. Hessen, just to let you know, you've got about 2 minutes left.
Okay, thank you. In the interior elevations, again, just calling attention to the framed gable and that banding that you can see from 1D and 1B elevations. And then on 1A and C, looking at the repetition of the structure and taking note of the minimal interference of that mechanical arm. Next. From these 3D interior views, this is where you can really highlight how that arm does not detract from the overall structure. So it is placed on the interior of that vent sill and pushes the panel outward. So from the exterior, you minimally see it and can focus on the overall aesthetic of the structure and not how it is operating. Next. Lastly, zooming out to look at the structure from the outside, what I would like to note is that Inherently, a greenhouse has a very specific purpose. So in total, it does look like a greenhouse. Its proportions have been determined to optimize the ventilation and the surface area of where those vents are placed, whether it be on the side or the top. But it's when you are mindful and look at the materiality and texture of the epay next to the infirmary, like in the rendered image, to feel the warmth of the colors, or in the minute details of the custom components, that you see the relationship with the context. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hessen. Do we have any questions from board members?
Listen, I have
Go ahead, Bill.
one question. Regarding the structure, I'm trying to understand, would this be reviewed and permitted because it's a custom built structure, would it be reviewed and permitted, and Kim, maybe a question of staff as well, maybe as a structure per se, would we potentially be seeing any supplemental structural elements required here? Clipping, strapping, anything like that? I'm just curious to know if the applicant had some insight on that.
So the BAR will not need to see it, but the building department definitely will. So they'll review that for the structural reasons.
Okay, I just didn't know if being a greenhouse, it maybe qualified in a different category, but being custom constructed structure, I just wasn't sure. And I guess then to the point, I would ask the applicant, have you vetted that? And is this building engineer that we potentially would not see any more supplemental clips, any other appurtenances to the building, because it's clean the way it's detailed now?
So there are some current clips and angles on the structure, and we do have a meeting set up to review the current drawings with my Kant structural engineer to just approve what we have here. But he did take a brief look and said that what he saw from an initial take was approved.
Thank you.
I have two quick questions for the applicant. Do you foresee sealing and resealing that epay, or letting it kind of weather to a lighter gray color?
We foresee sealing it or staining it initially, and then probably just letting it weather as time goes.
Okay. And then my other tiny question, it seems from the drawings like the shelf supports are not optional, but the shelves themselves are optional. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And so if whoever's deciding opted not to have the shelves, there really wouldn't be any horizontal elements on the walls.
There still would be the permanent vent sill, and on particular faces, there would be some shelving. And after speaking with the client, these technically are optional, but they are from the beginning wanting to utilize these. So again, they could not be there at times, but per their use for the structure, they will be there.
Okay, good.
Any other board questions at this time? All right, let's move on to public comment. Do we have any public comment, Kim?
We do. We have April Wood from Historic Charleston Foundation.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation, and HCF has met with the applicant and has reviewed the request for final approval for this new construction of a greenhouse at 900 King Street. We are in full support of this community garden and believe that the proposed structure is appropriate for the site and functional for the thriving garden. Thank you.
Kim, do we?
That's all we have.
Okay. We'll move on to city staff comments and recommendations.
The staff are confident that this building will be a wonderful addition to the lovely garden that now occupies the block. And the drawing set contains all of our requirements for final review. So we're recommending final approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Ms. Hessen, did you have anything to clarify or respond to from the public comment, from the public and staff comments?
No clarification, just wish to thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Let's move to board discussion and a vote.
This is Bill.
Go
Or
ahead,
Julie, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I'm sorry, this is Bill. I'll go ahead and start. I'm in agreement with the staff's assessment. I guess the only thing I would potentially add, if the motion is for final review, if there are any supplemental items visually appearing due to any structural review that the applicant does present, I just ask that that be a caveat of final details to staff added to that motion. Thank you.
And this is Julia. I think it's a really nice design and the details are very well considered. I'm glad to hear that the client and the architect intend to see those shelves in place. I think they are kind of integral to the overall design. And that's it. I appreciate the use of a really durable material and thoughtful custom details.
I don't have anything else to add.
I'll go ahead and make a motion if that's all right. I'll make a motion for final approval with staff's comments and a final review by staff.
We have a motion on the floor for final approval with staff comments and final review by staff. Do I have a second?
Second, Glenn.
Thank you, Glenn. Put it to a vote. Julia?
Yay in favor?
Bill?
Yay in favor.
Glenn?
Yay in favor.
Chair votes with a majority, and the motion passes unanimously. Before we move on to agenda item number 3, 12 magazine, we need to bring Fillmore back in.
He seems to be missing in action. Oh, found him. Yes.
Welcome back, Fillmore. We will now move on to agenda item number 3, 12 magazine. And Kim?
Okay. 12 magazine is requesting preliminary approval for repairs, modification, and expansion of rear addition. Buildings category 4 in the old and historic district. Just to give you a little sense of location, it's at the corner of Magazine and Logan Street. And some existing site photos. This is looking west down Logan, and you can see the building right here. And here's the one-story addition that will be modified. This is the front elevation. And another view of the front, also with the north and the little portion of the addition that pops out. Just a closer image of the rear. This is a survey card from 1973, listed as a category 4. And this image is perfect. Crisp. This is Sanborn maps from 1888 and 1902. Which depicts pretty similar building. I'm not sure if this kitchen was moved or the lot line was drawn incorrectly. But you see by 1902, it's a little north of the main building. And then by 1944, the lot line has been adjusted and the kitchen house is now touching the main house. And it has a one-story porch. And so with that, our applicants, David and Robin Richards. Want to take it from here? You have the floor whenever you're ready to speak.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
Okay, good. Yeah. Robin, are you on as well?
I am.
Okay. Yeah. Hello. Hey, Kim. Yeah, this is a building that my wife, Robin, who owns Worthwhile, who most of you probably are familiar with, is on currently on King Street. She's been leasing that building for quite a long time and been actually looking to purchase her own building for quite a long time. And this one came up recently, and we think it's a perfect fit. She just closed in the property last week, and I will, if you can just turn to the next page, next two pages, Kim, I'll walk you through the site plan. That is the building footprint as we intend to develop it. The original building was actually flip one more page and I'll walk you through the photos.
Forward?
Forward, yes, correct. Yeah. So there's the original building, was a 2 up, 2 down with a central stair, small crawl space and a very tight attic, but serviceable. Very nicely detailed, dating from the late 1700s to maybe early 1800 initially. You see St. John's Lutheran Church down the east on Magazine, and then the other direction is, of course, the city jail. So it's a wonderful little location. The house is charming as it could be, and most of the details are intact. Fortunately, the front chimney has been demolished from the first floor system up to the second floor. So we've got to rebuild that existing chimney there. Our intent for the original structure is to restore it to its original condition wherever possible. Somewhere along the lines during I think the 1980s, 70s restoration, which I'll talk more about, they cut in some air vents into the crawl space, and that's caused a fairly significant amount of rot to the existing floor joists. And so we are going to repair all of that, put a vapor barrier underneath the building and dehumidify and really aim to protect and take care of this wonderful original building. The back portion, so if you flip around, you see it on the upper right. That was not, in fact, the kitchen house. I think the kitchen house, unfortunately, was demolished at some point in time. This was an entirely new addition that was put onto the original structure, I think in the late 1970s, maybe into the early 1980s as well. You see, it doesn't have nearly the character of the original structure. As a CMU foundation with a poured in place slab there. It has, as far as I know, as long as I can remember anyway, it's always been enclosed. It's always looked like this. I don't think it was ever an open piazza. I don't see any indication of that. The slab is level in the interior, and there's no indication that there was a separate sort of piazza porch. So I think it was, from its inception, was enclosed like this with these louvers. Second floor, there's a bathroom that was sort of stuck onto the outside of on the east end to that structure. Obviously, because of the poured in place slab, all of the plumbing fixtures run around the perimeter of you can see them on the bottom right. The plumbing supply and waste lines run around the outside. So our intent is to clean all of that up, and ultimately, if you flip to the next page, I'll walk you through the plans. These are some additions you're familiar with, probably most of you. The sense is for me that it's critical that it architecturally speak of our time, but not be incongruent with the original structure. Some of these additions that unfortunately are in Charleston, in some of these beautiful buildings, are, to my eye, not really in keeping. Those along the top anyway, where you'd have a masonry structure and then the large black steel or box out there. So anyway, that's my sense of it. The ones on the lower bottom are more in keeping, and that's kind of the direction that you'll see that we've taken in our approach. You can proceed onto the next plan or sheet. Kim, number 6. Okay, so there's the existing demo and first floor plan. Robin runs a retail operation. It's women's clothing primarily, but some gift items. But in a retail place establishment, she needs open floor area. So we're doing our best to open this up without really in any way impairing the character of the original structure, leaving and preserving the fireplaces and protecting those wherever possible. But the idea is to try to open it up a little bit, including opening it up to the outside on the piazza. So that's, as you'll see, that'll be an open screen, light window combination. So that's the first level, really opening that up. If you could flip to the second page, second floor plans, and I'll walk you through that. Again, all this construction on the first existing construction is wood framing with plywood panels on it. So it's for a long time has been a office building. So it's not been used for residents for certainly since the 80s, I think. But it was an office building. It's got fluorescent lights in there, so it's pretty obviously an office building. If you want to flip to the next page, I'll take. Oh, there we are on the second page. All right, so you see the 2 existing rooms; those are maintained. Our intent is to clean that first, add basically a second floor over the existing footprint and clean up a lot of the issues that we see as problematic in terms of design of the 1980s edition. Robin is, a big part of her business is photography and photographing models for her to represent her clothing. And then she has a small kitchenette in that second floor addition with mechanical room and then a bathroom in there as well. If you can flip to the next page. So there's the existing third floor plan it shows the bathroom addition that sort of hangs off that east end. And we cleaned that up with this new approach. If you could flip to the next page.
Mr. Hesson, just to let you know, you've got about, excuse me, I'm sorry. I'm on the front. Mr. Richards, you have about 2 minutes left.
Okay, yeah, almost done. So go ahead and flip one more page and we'll get directly to the elevations. So there's the approach, the original design on the top. The second, and our concept is the sort of repeat what was originally the columns with an open bay on the second floor as well. And then we continue that around to the east side. This is your common, addition to a Charleston single family structure. Obviously, it's really important for Robin to be able to bring that light in as a retail establishment, not a residential. But that's important for her to be able to put her mannequins and merchandise in those windows and be able to bring people in. Also in the back, I didn't mention that we have a fence surrounding the north and east side of her parking. She'll now have to enter it from the south side rather than currently as parking is accessed from the north side. So that's the gist of that. You can flip one more page and you'll see the back side of the north side. So there's the original up on the upper left. And then our clean so now we got the hanging bathroom incorporated into it. There's a section of the fence that you see there on the bottom elevation. And then our detailing is just, you try to bring in some more appropriate canopy and detailing. The clapboard, original clapboard was 1x10 with a nice bead on it. So we'll be using 1x8 to differentiate the two time periods, and repointing the existing brick and so forth. We've met with Historic Charleston Foundation. I think they'll be speaking today. We've also met with the Preservation Society. Robin has reached out to many of the neighbors that around here. And to my knowledge, everybody is excited about and in support of this, this proposal.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. Do we have any questions from the board at this time for Mr. Richards or Mr. or Mrs. Richards?
I have a couple. David, could you describe at the the west end of the parapet? Kim, if you can go back one. At the east end of the parapet over the glass porch element. What am I looking at there? Is that like louvers or?
Over the piazza, over where would be
on the east elevation, yeah.
Oh, that's just this is a preliminary, so we're just looking for a height, scale, and mass, but that would be sort of standard piazza, and it'd be a beaded board and sort of a panel assembly. You can see the dashed line which floats behind it. That's the slope of the roof.
Cool. And then I noticed you have condensers shown both on the site plan and also on the roof. Yeah,
well, it's a little tricky situation. It's, Robbins has starved for space here. It's not a very big site. So we're probably going to have to, when we're still investigating, I don't have any mechanical. We've had some initial meetings with mechanical engineers. We don't have any details as to what they're going to need. We're looking at some mini split, but Robin also needs this place to put her recycling can and her trash can. So, and with those two spaces, we're kind of stuck for space. So it may well be that we end up putting mechanical on the roof if we can't get all those features down on the ground level. Our hope would be able to get it all there behind a little screen of some sort, but that I'm not sure yet. I don't have all the information.
Okay. And then let me see. I'm curious, do you honestly think you'll be able to just vertically extend like that north wall? I mean, it seems like a kind of tall order to me, no pun intended.
In terms of construction?
Yeah, like structurally, like.
Yeah, I don't see that as an issue. We're going to have to replace what was the old roof there, and we're going to be now framing across the entire space. But no, I don't see anything that's be problematic that would prohibit us from building that second story on any elevation.
Okay. And then my last question might be for Kim. If you could maybe give me your thoughts about the age of the addition. Like, can we look back at those Sanborn maps from the 40s and 50s? Because I'm inclined to agree with David that that extension's not.
Yeah, I know, that's odd because you look at the construction type and it's just concrete block and poured slab. I'm kind of at a loss. I hadn't seen these either, but yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Glenn, I just have two questions. I mean, one, I'm curious, has staff looked at the rear? I've always found that to be very curious, and I've always wondered if some of that wasn't older than those Sanborns show, but I don't know. I just want to be careful with this. And then I'm pretty sure that's the Philip Simmons gate, and I just want to make sure that's not disappearing from the brick columns that are set to be demoed. I don't know the age of it, but it certainly has all the. I walked by the other day just for a look at this, and it kind of it made me kind of rethink. There are just things about that addition that read to me as having some clues of being maybe older than that Sanborn shows, but I could be off on this.
Well, the construction, the framing is contemporary pine you know, just 2x4 pine. As to the gate, I don't believe it's a Philip Simmons. I've looked at it pretty carefully. The vertical, I guess you call them pickets, are not welded to the horizontal components. I don't think it is at all. It doesn't look like it's a forged piece or in any respect. And those columns are not old. I mean, it's contemporary gray Portland-based mortar. So I don't think any of that's very old at all, honestly. It's possible that, you know, that this structure, as you see it here, was built over a footprint of an earlier structure, but everything I see there, the concrete block, the poured in place slab, the wood framing, is all tells me it was done in the 70s and 80s. And that's what our records show. That Herbert DaCosta actually did that. I know some of you probably know Herbert, but he did that. So we saw somewhere in our files that he did pull a permit for doing this addition in the 70s, the 1978 or something like that. I think we have that in our file, but we could look back to that towards that with Kim. But I don't believe that any of this is older than 1975. I just don't.
I'm happy to dig in further on the age and find out if that theory is true.
Yeah, I just want to be careful with it, truthfully. I'm not opposed necessarily to what's being submitted. And I see the concrete block, I see all of that, but standing seam, the crimped roof, chamfer columns, they're just things on here that don't read 1975 to me. And every detail about that gate reads Philip Simmons to my eye. The tightness of those scrolls, the candle flame on the top. I think that needs to be a condition we consider.
Yeah, we can
I'm
look
not saying it's the best of his work, but I am pretty darn sure it's his, especially if DaCosta worked on it as well.
Certainly we have a higher degree of respect for him, and if it is in fact that we're agreed on that that's probable, that we will keep that gate, I can assure you.
Yeah, absolutely. And we did talk about that, I believe, at one point.
Yeah, maybe we just meet on site and take a look at it, or maybe there's some records in the file, but we'll look at that very carefully.
Yeah, like I say, David, I don't think it, you know, it's not a museum piece of his, but I'm looking at some photos that tell me probably 99.5% sure it likely is.
Do we have any other board questions at this time?
I have one quick question on the north elevation. We can flip to that. Where the second story is going on the existing first story on the addition. It's a little hard to tell that I'm asking a question. I really can't quite tell from the drawings. It looks like because that north wall extends out past the main house, that parapet is going to turn back and cut the very edge of the rake on that roof. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that is correct. And we'll have to sort of clean the details up there and figure out how the best way to sort of accomplish that. But yes, it would stick up above the gutter, basically.
The fact that on the south side you're tucking that in, so you recover the intersection of the gable and the rake.
Yeah, there it's clean.
But then it goes away on the.
Yeah, it's cleaner. It's definitely cleaner on the south side. The north side is. Well, I mean, we'll just run the roof. We won't take any of the roof off. We'll run that parapet into the roof there just for the last 8 inches or something like that. And then the roof, it'll be both metal, so the roof would.
I think there's a detail that would clean that up nicely.
Yes, I agree. I just haven't got to that point yet. We're preliminary level at this point, but yes, I understand the importance of carrying that correctly.
Any other board comments or board questions? All right, we'll move on to public comments. Kim, it looks like we've got the Historic Charleston Foundation.
We do. We have April Wood.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has met with the applicant and has reviewed the request for preliminary approval for repairs, modification, and expansion of an existing rear addition. We are pleased to see that this early historic building will be rehabilitated and adaptively reused by a local business owner. We are in support of this application with the additional comment that the Philip Simmons gate should be retained if it is verified to be Philip Simmons. Thank you.
April.
We also have Erin Minigan.
Thank you. Erin Menningen with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society would like to thank the applicant for reaching out and walking us through this proposal. We are very encouraged by this effort to restore and bring life back to this prominent corner historic building. We find the approach to the addition to be appropriate and beneficial in cleaning up the complicated massing of the existing additions. We might encourage continued study of the glazing on the south elevation of the addition to reduce or mitigate its scale, as this will be highly visible along the right-of-way, but generally we are supportive of the project as proposed. Thank you.
And we also have a letter from Charleston Village Association dated March 23rd, 2021. Dear board members, Charleston Village Association has reviewed the application for preliminary approval for repairs, modification, and expansion of a rear addition at 12 Magazine Street. We are excited to see the planned improvements for 12 Magazine and are heartened by the applicant's endeavor to work with the existing building fabric and configuration. We do ask that as this project is further developed, that the two-story glass enclosure be restudied. It is noted that the original columns of the first floor porch will remain. We would like to confirm that this glass enclosure system stands free or aligns with the rear of these columns in order that the concept of the enclosed porch is maintained in a similar fashion to how it exists today. We assume the same for the matching columns to be installed on the second floor addition. We also feel the scale of the divided light system overwhelms the delicate detailing of the original main structure and is out of scale with the other diminutive building on Magazine. We would like to see a more sensitive approach to this fenestration. Again, the neighborhood is excited that such effort is being made to restore 12 Magazine, and we look forward to seeing how this design develops as the applicant moves towards final review. Sincerely, the BAR BZA Committee, Charleston Village Association. And Kim, I think that may be it for public comment on 12 Magazine, unless I'm missing something.
I think that's it.
Kim, I'll turn it over to you for city staff comments and recommendations.
Thank you. In concept, this project has merit. It reconfigures an awkward rear addition and delineates it from the original core of the historic building. The use of modern materials and a contemporary design strengthens the project as a whole. The applicant has also taken the time to meet with us, and we appreciate it. That said, the detailing of the fenestration will make this project successful, and so it needs to be very thoughtful and well designed. The window trim overwhelms the slender columns, especially where it abuts them. Offset the glazing wall from the columns to fully express that element of the historic addition. With that alteration, the glazing will need to be restudied, adjusted, and the mullions should be reduced. The application does not completely fulfill all the requirements for preliminary approval, so the staff's recommending conceptual approval with staff comments noted. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kim. Mr. or Mrs. Richards, did you have any response to the comments from the public and city staff, or did you want to clarify anything?
No, we will take these under advisement and then certainly be getting back to y'all with additional details and cleaning up some of the making adjustments where we feel comfortable with at the next level.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. I'll now move to board discussion and a board vote.
this is Bill. I'll go ahead and jump in. Oh, Julia, you this time. I jumped it on you again. I'm probably.
No, it's okay. Go ahead. I like it.
No, go ahead, Julia.
Okay. I think there's a lot to like here. I appreciate the architect setting that new addition back from the southeast corner of the original house and keeping the new roof line distinct and subordinate. My issue really is if that addition is not older than 1975, it seems like unnecessary to pretend that it's being preserved and to go through all these hoops and pretend that you're really just going to add on to that structure, the foundation and the walls. I mean, I'd almost, if it were proven that the material there is not historic, I'd almost rather see that north wall just kind of rebuilt cleanly myself. But rebuilt cleanly with siding differentiated accordingly. But you know, personally, I'd be on board for maybe a conceptual approval if with contingent on verifying the age of the addition and verifying the structural feasibility of vertically adding to it if it needs to be preserved. And I think staff's comments about the fenestration and the historic groups and the neighborhoods comments about the fenestration should be considered as well.
This is Bill. Oh, and I'm jumped in on Bill Moore, I guess. I'm sorry. I agree with Julia's assessment there and her comments. I would think they probably would be added to any motion. I do agree with staff's comments as well. And I definitely could see the conceptual approval. I did want to ask staff though one clarification of one comment regarding the number of mutton bars. I do want to ask, does that mean you would anticipate fewer panes on this fenestration or more? I wanted to make sure I had that clarified.
Well, I mean, ideally it would be fewer, but that's to be determined.
Okay.
I think the panes of glass can widen.
So it'd be fewer per your comment. Okay, great. Yeah, so I agree with staff's comments and recommendation. I believe conceptuals is viable, and also those extra couple of comments Julia made, I think were very, very good.
So I would pose the question based on Julia's comments. How do we determine? Is that a site visit to look at the framing and the material? Is it what is that method, Julia? Did you have anything in mind or a recommendation? Because I am with you on that. I mean, if this is all 1975, then I feel very differently from it being 1915.
I guess I was going to kind of put it in the applicant's hands, and maybe, you know, Kim had kind of offered to look into that as well. I think that would be sufficient if they work together to kind of inform us.
Bill Moore here. I agree with my fellow board members, and I'm not quite sure how we, I'll defer to Lindsay on this, how we sort of go about this in a motion, but I think it's very important to more accurately determine the age of the existing additions. And I'm with Julia and Glenn on this. I think that if they're proven to be 1970s, that a cleaner approach to this, I mean, fundamentally, these things are going to go away with the new addition, regardless of if you can save a few little pieces of it. And you would end up with them, if they are 1970s, you would end up with a much better construction if they just went away and the addition were built and detailed appropriately. And so I'm certainly fine with this at a conceptual level of height, scale, mass, and general architectural direction, but I do have concerns about the age of these And if they are proven to be much older, then I think we have a little bit of a conundrum here.
Yeah,
But
Fillmore,
how we
I think,
go about making a motion. But I am certainly, conceptually, I think this is a really great improvement.
Maybe it should be a deferral. I don't know. And I think it sounds like we're all, on board with the basic idea of this. And I think it's very positive and a lot of good things going on, but maybe it's kind of a pivotal question to answer about the age of that addition.
yeah, I think the way Fillmore said that, Julia, is fairly accurate as to how I feel as well. I mean, as far as the scale, the mass, I mean, I feel like that piece of the work is appropriate for the building. I'm happy that somebody is going to put some love into this old building. I think where I'm teetering is on the edge of, is this demolition? Is it not demolition? And what is the quality and age of the volume of what would be going away? And whether that might be photos or a site visit or whatever it is to understand better what is under there, what's behind the fluorescent lights and the concrete block base. I mean, I see the concrete block and I know we can't pretend that that's any older than it is. That may be something the applicants can clarify for the board to give a level of comfort on this. And then if it is older, I agree. I agree with Fillmore. I think the way you would engage, some of those existing columns and things like that would be very different if this is significantly older. I think the addition or I think the project might end up being better because of a little further investigation.
Oh, go ahead, Fillmore.
May I ask if Kim would be willing to do that as a staff site visit to verify? Yes, okay.
Be happy to.
What Glenn said earlier, what popped out to my eye was the shape of the columns. And when that was enclosed, the concrete block foundation and the slab could have been poured and the perimeter of the porch, an earlier porch just left. I mean, that would not be sort of a unusual situation. And so I'm not saying those columns couldn't be mid 1970s, but they certainly did catch my eye. And so, so that's what makes me a little cautious.
So see if this would make sense. Motion for deferral so that the applicant can verify the age of addition and verify the structural feasibility of preservation if it's to be preserved. And to restudy fenestration at the porch infill and to study the gates and present a solution for the gate.
Julia, would you entertain an amendment or a slight modification?
Yeah.
In the verification process, could we add that staff would conduct this on-site review?
Sure, yeah. So do you want me to say those things again? What, slightly amended or just
maybe
add?
Lindsay could read them back.
Yeah, let me see if I can get it. So a motion for deferral for the purpose of having the applicant verify the age of the structure, which staff will visit and assist with that verification. And to study if this does need to be preserved, because the result of the study is that it is aged. The structural feasibility of adding on to the existing structure. Also, I guess it would be a third board comment to study the fenestration of the porch. Is that right, Julia?
Yes.
And then finally to study the gate and if it does turn out to be a Philip Simmons, a plan for that gate.
I think that does it.
Okay, Kim, did you get that?
The paragraph.
Sorry.
Yes. I'm wondering if we can abbreviate that. If you, Lindsay, if you think it's necessary to.
I'm certain that we can. So I probably said a little too much. A motion for deferral to verify the age of the structure with staff to verify age. And also the structural feasibility, to study the structural feasibility of adding on if that addition must be preserved. Also to study the fenestration of the porch and study the gate if it turns out to be a Philip Simmons.
Got it, thank you.
Okay, do I have a second?
I have, may I ask a question of staff?
Certainly.
With if this is a deferral, if it's determined that that's you know, modern, if the addition is modern, and that can come back to us for preliminary, right? I'm trying to say if it turns out that it is modern, I'm trying to make sure that we're not imposing an undue burden on the applicant by making them come back an extra time. So it can come back to us as preliminary, correct? Because it would have to come under, we gave it conceptual, it would have to come back for preliminary anyway.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just.
Yes, thanks, Fillmore.
Yeah, I'm not to insert too much, but I think that sounds fair, Fillmore. I mean, if Kim were to determine that the entire thing is modern, then yeah, I think we would pick up where they were today, and also the understanding that we have kind of verbally said that height, scale, and mass is in the right direction.
Exactly, yeah. Okay, so
we have a motion on the floor for deferral with all of the comments noted. Do we have a second? Or is
This
there
is
more?
Bill, I'll second.
Thank you, Bill. Put the motion to a vote. Glenn,
Yay in favor?
Fillmore,
yay in favor.
Julia,
Yay in favor?
Bill.
Yay in favor.
Chair votes with the majority and the motion carries unanimously. Moving on, as I said previously, agenda item number 4 was withdrawn by staff. And we are now on the 5th and final agenda item, 8 Gillen Street.
Gillen Street is requesting final approval for a new right angle sign at his business. The building is not rated in the Charlestown neighborhood and in the Old and Historic District. Okay. All right, here's an aerial just showing the location of the building. And this is Gillen Street looking west toward East Bay. You have number 6 right there on your right. And this is looking east. And the applicant wants to take it from here. You have the floor whenever you're ready.
Can you hear me fine?
Yeah.
This is Austin Jager with Brooks Signs, presenting today for approval of a new sign at 8 Gillen Street. The new sign will be 9 square feet, specifically 36 inches by 36 inches. We propose this sign to be mounted to an existing right angle bracket that's located on the building. You can see in that photo right there. The construction of the sign will be 3/4 inch wood, sealed, painted with flat vinyl graphics. 9 square feet meets the requirements per section 54.413. The bracket, there's a second bracket that's currently on the building that's you can see from the east elevation view that you had on Google Images. That's on the second floor up there. Go forward one slide from here, right there. Yeah, there's a larger bracket on the second floor that looks to have historically housed a much larger sign. Again, our 36 by 36 sign will hang on that existing bracket that's below it that currently has an Archer construction sign. The client has purchased this building with the intention to be the sole tenant inside. The building storefront currently measures 61 feet by 24 feet, sorry. We feel that this sign meeting the code and the scale of the building is very appropriate. Beyond that, we feel that 9 square feet again meets the code. I think meets the size requirements for the appropriate scale for the building, and just asking for the BAR's approval to get this thing done.
Thank you, Mr. Jager. Do we have any board questions at this time?
I have one just to clarify. So the old sign is believed to be the same width. Is that correct? But a shorter height. Is that correct?
The sign we're proposing will be larger than the sign that was there in this photo. Yes, but historically, it leads me to believe that there have been much larger signs there with the sign bracket. You know, the sign bracket that's on the second floor is at least twice as large as the sign or the bracket that we're proposing to hang on. We have historical images of neighboring businesses with much larger signs. You know, in the history of that street, there have been larger signs hung than what we're proposing. Again, we're not proposing to hang the sign from that bracket. We're proposing, yes, the one that's right next to the door.
How wide is that existing sign now, just for context?
I believe that sign is 36 inches wide. I have in my notes. I don't think that sign was there when we did our survey, but from scale, it looks to be about 36. That's our sign will be, yeah, just about that size. In width, it'll be taller in height.
Okay. Any other board questions? Okay, let's move on to public comment. Oh, I am not seeing any public comment for this one. Kim, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, let's move on to city staff comments and recommendations.
Hey. Excuse me, I have someone that's trying to comment on publicly on this one.
Okay.
I don't think that anyone else has registered to speak.
Eric Roden.
I don't believe he's registered to speak, but Chairwoman,
he's the building owner. He says he's in the queue.
Oh,
up
I
to you.
think you should have spoken during the applicant presentation, but yes, I think it's fine to have him speak now.
Hey guys, this is Eric Roden. Thanks for allowing me in. I was able to listen to all of this and I was under the impression that can y'all hear me first off?
Yeah, yes.
Great. I was under the impression I had been registered with Brooks Signs. I apologize for that confusion. I just wanted to say that the Archer sign that is in that photo is not there currently. There was a temporary sign approved for Robertson Helen property as it was a for sale sign. I know that that was a temporary approval, but the sign that was hanging there during the sale period was a 36-inch vertical by a 30-inch width. And we kind of based it off of that because when that sign was hanging there, I mean, the building's mine. I certainly want it to look appropriate and tasteful. And I own other buildings in the neighborhood and greatly appreciate the work of everyone on the board. But if this sign was hung and we could take a look at it, I don't feel like it's going to feel out of scale at all. And all of the buildings on Gillen Street have much larger, higher brackets. And we've found several photos that show even the wine bar, which is one building to the west on that street, at one point had a sign that was probably at least 8 feet by 6 feet. It looks like probably in the 30s on the photo. But practically speaking, the issue with the sign is if we were to go to the 2x2 that was recommended before we appealed to the full board, most of my clients, there are very few personal injury firms downtown. We opened this office about 6 weeks ago, and my clients are not traditionally from downtown Charleston. And when you're going south on East Bay Street, I need something a little bit larger to direct them down that street because they're just going to have a hard time finding me. I'm not sure what else we can say of it, but I'm going to occupy the entire area at 8 Gillen. So that whole bottom left section will be my office. And the other signs that are for 6 Gillen are flush mounted against the wall because there was no historical bracket on that side. Originally, we wanted to petition the board for a sign to come off of the second floor extension that comes out, but it sounded initially like there was absolutely no way that was going to be approved. So we had the sign made off of what we thought would be, in keeping with, and I guess it is in keeping with the language of the ordinance. But if you're standing there looking at this building, there was a sign hanging on it before that was almost the identical size. And it's really not out of scale to the building. It's a wide, large building. I would greatly appreciate it. And I dealt with the BAR with you before, Kim, when we repainted 100 East Bay and got rid of that god awful salmon color so that it didn't clash with all the beautiful rainbow row houses earlier or late last year. And even if you're, inclined to say it needs to be smaller, the sign's made. If we could hang it up, and I know someone said earlier that they walked by one of the properties that was in discussion earlier and took a look at it, and it can be hung in 5 minutes and taken down in 5 minutes. So if there's any way, if you think it would be appropriate for someone to meet me out there, happy to put the sign up. And if it still doesn't feel appropriate, revisit it. Because I don't think, given the scale of the building, that it's going to look out of place or be strange at all. I mean, there are a lot of signs up and down East Bay, including the Snob sign and a lot of others that stick out from buildings that are much larger in proportion to the scale of the building than what this is. And that I guess that's it. And if anybody has any questions specifically, I'm happy to answer, or you can direct them. I guess I wasn't registered initially to who's speaking. Austin. To Austin.
No, I'll consider that part of the applicant's presentation, and I'll ask the board now again, based on what Mr. Roden has said. Did you have any other questions about the sign? Julia, you're on mute.
Did you just verify the proposed clearance beneath the sign, if it's 36 inches tall?
The walking clearance below the sign?
Yes.
Yeah, that is 8 foot 4 inches.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board questions? All right. Public comment, we had none. So now, Kim, I'll turn it over to you for city staff comments and recommendations.
Thank you. We just have a couple comments. Gillen Street is a one-way, single-lane cobblestone street that is slowly traversed and pedestrian friendly. The proposal is oversized and larger than any right angle sign on Broad Street. This is inappropriate and inconsistent for any location in the city. We urge the applicant to resubmit the proposal with a reduction in overall size. The staff's recommending denial. Thank you.
And I'll ask Mr. Roden and Mr. Jaeger, did you want to respond to any of the staff comments or clarify?
I do have a clarification question. I know we have hung 9 square feet signs on Broad Street in the past. We can dig up historically that where we've pulled permits for that. I don't know if that would sway your opinions on the matter, but I know we have hung signs this large around the city in this same district.
I have no comment. I live across the street. I imagine I'll take a stroll down Broad and take a look at it and see exactly what's hanging. But I know what was hanging there before when we filed the petition, at least for the for sale sign that was there. I never saw the Archer construction sign.
All right, thank y'all. Well, having heard from the applicant, I'll now close the discussion and open it up for board discussion and a vote.
Okay, I can start. I think there's a compromise here to be made. Given the existing bracket and the vertical kind of proportion questions, I think 3 feet in width is probably okay. But I see staff's point for sure, and I don't think it would hurt anything to decrease the height of it and maybe change the layout of the signage just a little bit. Decrease the height to 2 feet, for example. I'm curious what other board members think.
I tend to agree. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Glenn Gardner, I tend to agree with Julia. I don't really have an issue with the 36-inch width. And I understand the applicant's need for the public or for someone visiting their office to find them. I almost just wish it were missing the top part with the kind of wax seal thingamajig. And, said the rodent law personal injury lawyers, which would get you to, maybe a 24 by 36 or something like that. I mean, I'm just sort of looking across my office at a 24 by 36 sheet of, plan paper, which is a pretty decent sized sheet of paper, that I think would definitely give them visible signage that I know they want.
I tend to agree with Julia and Glenn. The other signs, I stuck my head down the alley yesterday morning, and the other existing signs, and I know there have been a lot of different signs on this alley, tend to be around that 36-inch width, but they are all shorter. They're all in that 2 feet, I think, or less. And I think that is a more appropriate proportion for this location. So I agree with Julie. I think there's a very reasonable compromise to be made here.
Yeah, this is Lindsay. I don't generally have a problem with the 36 by 36, but if it is out of context with the other signs in that area, then I agree that it needs to be the height needs to be shortened. I'm fine with the width of the sign, but if it is out of context, then it would be more appropriate to shorten the height.
Lindsay, can I make a clarification really quickly?
Yes.
I just looked it up. The Archer sign, just for reference, is 32 by 12.
I think the one on the closer to Broad Street is a little wider than that. I'm not sure, but I think so. Of course, there are ways to cheat that a little bit and keep it, by shape instead of just being a square, to visually maybe cheat it a little wider than not 30, less than 36, but a little wider by refining the shape. There are ways to cheat the eye a little bit and make that look better. It does look like a big square sheet of plywood, piece of plywood.
Yeah, I don't have, I mean, looking at the blue sign on the left with the compass on it, presuming that is probably 36 inches, I don't have an issue with the 36. I think the 36 inches tall is going to block the visual of the kind of those proud stucco details over the windows. And I think that's the part that needs to be considered. Otherwise, I would be fine with this getting resolved with staff and with Brooks being able to probably amend that sign to let them go ahead and get a sign up, because I'm sure they're anxious to do that.
Kim, would you be okay with working this out at staff? If we make some sort of motion?
We're going to site visit and taking a look. Everything's necessary.
Glenn, do you think you could articulate that?
I will, yeah, and I mean, I'm willing to go on a limb before a motion and say that in looking at the sign that we were shown, the 36 square, it appears that that could probably be altered to like a 36 by 22. And I'm just sort of looking at the Archer sign now, knowing that it is 12 inches tall. I mean, I would make a motion that the sign is approvable. And this isn't a motion, I'm tossing this to my fellow board members, that I think the sign is approvable as a 36 by 22.
Sounds reasonable to me.
Maximum, so a maximum 36 by 22.
Right, yeah, so I'm gonna float a motion that for denial as submitted, but for proposed staff approval for resubmittal as a 36 by 22 maximum hanging sign on the existing bracket.
Okay, so a motion on the floor for denial as submitted, with approval by staff upon resubmission of a planned sign with a maximum dimensions of 36 inches by 22 inches. Did I say that correctly, Glenn?
Correct.
Second that.
Second by Julia.
Madam Chairman, one quick point. Is that 36 inches wide by 22 inches tall?
Yes, thank you for that clarification.
Yes.
Bill, 36 inches wide by 22 inches tall. Please revise the motion to reflect that, Kim.
Thank you.
Motion by Glenn, second by Julia. Do we have any more board discussion before we put it to the vote?
I'll just articulate that there were some crazy, huge, weird signs in the past of this city, but we're talking about right now and what's appropriate now.
All right, hearing no more discussion, I'll put it to a vote. Bill?
Yay in favor.
Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
Glenn?
Yay in favor.
Julia?
Yay in favor.
Chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. That is all the items we have on tonight's agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed.